Good evening, everybody. I should first explain that I'm in the chair this evening because my very good friend Andrew Hodson is a little bit under the weather, and we wish him well for an early recovery. Going straight to the agenda then, the first item on the agenda is the Members' Code of Conduct, and I must ask, are there any declarations of interest?
Sorry, through you, Chair, can I just ask you to remind members and attendees to turn off their cameras and microphones?
Yes, indeed. Will you all please turn off your cameras and microphones? I think we've checked with the webcasting officer, haven't we, that the sound is working?
That's correct, yeah.
So in that point, then I think we can now go to the point where we invite our legal services officer to undertake a roll call of the members present.
Thank you, Chair. I will do that, and then we'll come to the webcast notice. Just for the roll call, can you just confirm Councillor George Davies is present?
Councillor George Davies present.
I'm obliged. Councillor Karl Greaney?
Yes, I'm present.
Councillor Jones is obviously in the chair. Councillor Chris Jones?
Yes, I'm present.
Councillor Irene Williams?
Yes, present.
Councillor Jerry Williams?
Yes, present.
Councillor Muspratt, who is standing in for Councillor Norbury?
Present.
Councillor Collins?
Good evening, present.
Councillor Les Rowlands?
Present, Ken.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Williams?
Present.
Councillor Wright, who I understand is sitting in for Councillor Hodson?
Councillor Wright, present.
I'm obliged. Councillor Mitchell?
Councillor Mitchell, present.
And Councillor Cooke?
Councillor Cooke, present. Good evening.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor.
That's everybody. Well,
Yes.
Then that takes us to the webcast notice, I believe, doesn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah. Well, this meeting will be webcast and a record will be retained on the council website. For those at home viewing the webcast, I'd like to inform you that if you look above the video, you'll see a resources tab. Select this and a link to the agenda will appear in the right-hand side. This will allow you to open the agenda in PDF form and follow the discussion and debate.
Thank you, Chair. Before we carry on to the agenda, can I just also record the presence of Councillor Stapleton?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
We wouldn't want to leave Jean out, would we?
No.
Okay. Right. Well, we've got the simple matter of the code of conduct. Members of the committee are asked to declare. Do we have any disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest to declare?
Could I just ask a question, please, Adrian?
Certainly do. Yes.
In terms of the Wirral Award, I have put forward 2 nominations. Does that have to be divulged here at this point?
I don't know. Ken, I think we'll ask for professional advice here, Ken.
Yes, please.
I think if you can confirm that you have nominated an individual, obviously the Wirral Award Working Party may or approve those nominations, and I'm not sure whether that would incorporate the individual you nominated. So if that does, then you can make that confirmation, and I understand obviously there will be Councillor Jones and the other spokespersons who are also on the Wirral Ward Working Party. You can make a note of it here for the minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, George?
That's fine.
No. Anybody else? No? In that case, I think we can go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the the minutes. I take it everybody's read the minutes on pages 1 to 4, in which case I'm sure we can approve their accuracy. I'm quite willing
Agreed.
to move that they are accurate.
Agreed, Chair.
We're all agreed?
Can I ask for someone to propose that and second it?
Read.
I'll propose that. I'll propose that, Chair.
Councillor Rowlands proposing. Can I just have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Who's aye? Sorry.
That's proposed and seconded.
So who's the seconder? Sorry.
Councillor Mitchell will do.
Councillor Mitchell. Thank you.
All agreed?
Agreed. Agreed.
Then we can go on to item 3, which is referral from the council. The motion relating to the RSPCA'S fireworks campaign. Now, I think it would be a good idea again to ask Ken to give us the formal position on this. My understanding is at this stage, all we have to do is to agree and approve it, and then we get on with it as the year wears on.
Well,
got that right?
Well, clearly there's been a number of recommendations. Councillor Rennie is here to talk to the resolution and obviously, the motion, and she can set out the reasoning why it was brought to council. And then clearly there are a number of recommendations, your resolutions, and clearly I think one of them does relate to this committee and how it proposes to liaise with licensed venues to encourage safe, responsible neighbourly use of fireworks within their grounds. So it might be an opportunity, Chair, to ask Councillor Rennie, who's present, to ascertain whether she wants to add anything to what's been stated within the papers.
Oh, thank you, Ken. Is Jerry asking to speak? No, his name came up. Never mind. No, in that case, we can go ahead. Go on then, Leslie. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the committee for inviting me just to come along tonight. I won't take up too much of your time, but if I can just ask you to cast your minds back to the 7th of December and the council meeting which we had, and at that council meeting I was delighted to be able to propose a notice of motion in respect of a campaign by the RSPCA asking for legislation to be brought in for the use of fireworks, and in particular the noise levels of fireworks. And the RSPCA campaign basically was around asking for the decibel to be reduced from 120 as it is at present to 90. And the main reason for that is, and most of you I'm sure will have also have been contacted by residents urging you to support that campaign. I know I was. It's a national campaign, but locally it did draw an awful lot of, quite rightly, public interest as well. And as again we'll recall from the council meeting, it was pointed out by myself and others that the noise of fireworks, some of them extremely loud, were having a detrimental effect on animal welfare. We'd read in the press and on social media, both this year and unfortunately in previous years, that animals had been frightened. They had suffered extreme distress from the fact of the loudness of fireworks. And, you know, there were some horrific pictures, particularly on social media, where animals had actually bolted, particularly horses, in a reaction to the sound of the fireworks. One had ended up in a ditch and unfortunately died, and the list goes on and on and on. But it isn't just obviously animals, it also affects human beings as well, particularly veterans and those people who suffer from post-traumatic stress are heavily affected by the loudness of some of the fireworks. Now, obviously, there's an awful lot of work which goes on, particularly from our fantastic trading standards officers, our licensing officers, and also, I'm glad to say, members of Merseyside Fire and Rescue, looking at the legislation that we work under at the moment and visiting particularly premises who sell fireworks to the public. This isn't at all about banning fireworks at all. In fact, it's completely the opposite, because there are a number of people who do really enjoy fireworks. But the particular part which is relevant to this committee, Chair, is the third bullet point from the end of what's printed on the agenda, and that is to ask the Regulatory and General Purposes Committee to investigate how Council can work with our licensed venues to encourage the safe, responsible and neighbourly use of fireworks within their grounds. And what we are, the intention of that is, what we're getting at is, obviously in Wirral, like a lot of places, we have some very nice venues for social occasions, and I'm particularly thinking of some of the hotels that we have, particularly in the more rural areas of the borough, where they have weddings obviously all year in normal times, obviously not in COVID times. And in the summertime and spring, when people are really not expecting to hear loud fireworks, they are actually set off in a way to celebrate some of these occasions. And it was thought by a number of people who I particularly spoke to, and I know my ward colleagues also did, that if we could perhaps think of a good neighbour code of conduct, or similar to something like I'm trying to remember what it's called now, the Home Watch scheme, where it's completely voluntary, people don't have to join it. But if we could get some of these venues, the larger venues who hold these celebratory events, to actually perhaps join into a code of conduct, for want of a better word, perhaps it's a bit too strong, with the council, to prove that, you know, they are working with the neighbourhood that surrounds them. And obviously in rural areas, a lot of that is small communities and farms particularly, and hence the loudness of the fireworks actually could cause their animals and also the people living around these venues some distress. So it's nothing to be hard and fast about, but it would be extremely good if perhaps the committee could look to working with our officers to try to encourage some of these venues to actually join such a code of practice, really, more than a code of conduct. And I would like to just suggest that to your committee, and if that was something you think you might be interested in, then perhaps we could ask officers to formulate perhaps a way to progress that matter. So I'll leave it at that at the moment, Chair, but happy to expand on anything if anyone wants to ask any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. Well, from what you've just told us, it's going to be work in hand for this committee to now get on with. Any further comments or questions for Leslie? Are we all clear on that?
I think it's just work for us to get on with, Adrian.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Leslie, I think you've made it absolutely clear what we have to do. It's now for the committee to proceed, get on with it in good time. Okay, well,
Can I just clarify if there's anything in particular? It's just that the officers will investigate the possibility of premises entering into a code of conduct, or did you want to make it slightly differently worded, or a suggestion?
I mean, just as an instance and a comparable, really, Ken, you know, you will see from a number of these venues, they have signs up advising their guests as they're leaving, you know, to respect the local residents in the area, in other words, to keep quiet. So something along those lines, I say, not to be terribly prescriptive, but just hopefully to allow them to engage willingly to obviously realise the problems that loud fireworks do cause. It's possible for them to have silent fireworks. So, as I say, it wouldn't be hard and fast and nothing which we would be wanting to impose upon them. But I think there's a lot of goodwill out there. And I'm sure that these venues, you know, if asked to join such, and obviously they could contribute to how this may work as well, that would be something which I think would benefit the Wirral particularly.
Well, Ken's suggestion that there should be a code of conduct would imply at least a moral obligation on all of these bodies. Is that how you see it, Ken?
It would be a moral request. I don't know if Margaret O'Donnell is here to be able to assist as to whether this has been an issue for officers in the past. Margaret wants to make comment.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, members. What I'm understanding from what's been presented is that I think my task would be to draw up a code of conduct and bring it back to this committee, potentially for approval. Is what I would be understanding is the ask, as to some suggestions as to how the premises referred to by Councillor Rennie could maybe improve in their operations to reduce the distress that may be caused to animals in the area. And I'm certainly, obviously, willing to research that and investigate that and explore it in readiness to bring back, further report to this committee.
That's pretty clear, I think.
That sounds pretty good to me. Thank you very much, Margaret. I know that your hands are full at the moment with the regular licensing work, but obviously for all that yourself and your colleagues are doing with COVID-19 as well, which is appreciated. So we would, well, I particularly, and I know that I'm sure colleagues from across the council of all parties would really appreciate that if you can find some time for that as we go on. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Chair.
Fine. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Chris Cooke has raised his hand. Chris?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I was just wondering if it would help council officers, although I don't want to impose an extra work burden on councillors, if there were perhaps just one very small working group on this, perhaps just meeting once, for a couple of hours to talk these things through, if that would be an assistance to Margaret and her team on this. Just something to consider.
Margaret, would that be workable for you?
I mean, it's a matter for you, members. As I say, I'm happy to draw up a draft and share it with, if there are a number of councillors who are particularly interested. I mean, obviously, initially with Councillor Rennie and possibly other colleagues who have got particular interest in this area. More than happy to share with them in advance of bringing it to committee, if that helps.
Okay. Leslie, over to you. You're happy with that?
Yes, thank you very much. I mean, clearly I'm not a member of this committee, but I'd be more than willing to sit on any sort of working group or anything that I could possibly do. And I know that also my colleague, Councillor Ian Lewis as well, he shares, the same high interest that I have, as do, a number of members across the council. But, perhaps myself or Ian or both of us, and then together with colleagues from this committee as well, we'd be more than happy to work with you, Margaret, and whoever would like to join us, if that's satisfactory.
Okay, well, there's in effect that amounts to a proposal that we shall have a small group to work on it and report back.
Chair, would it be possible, obviously, to keep things quite, tight and flowing, that maybe those members who wish to be part of that possibly notify Anne Beecham of their interest, and then I'll then know who we can actually bring together if that's possible.
Yeah, that sounds like a perfectly sensible idea, doesn't it? Yes. Can we do that? All agreed?
Agreed.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I think
everybody.
I see no further hands up, so I think that more or less concludes it. And thank you for bringing it to us, Leslie.
Thank you for listening. Thank you.
This takes us on to the next item, which is the Wirral Award. I think we'll have to get some advice on how we proceed with this now from Ken.
Okay, well, obviously, through you, Chair, yes. The purpose of this report is an open report to request agreement from the committee that the Wirral Award be conferred on the nominees that each member has a list of and which have been recommended by the Wirral Award Working Party. As members will be aware, having determined this on an annual basis, the Wirral Award is intended to confer civic recognition upon individuals or organisations resident or located in Wirral for an outstanding achievement within the previous 12 months or distinguished service to the borough over a period of 20 years or more, unless there are exceptional circumstances. All nominations, as I've indicated, to which you have knowledge of, were considered by the Wirral Award Working Party, comprising of the Mayor, the leader, in this case, however, it was the deputy leader, and representatives of the political groups by way of chair and spokespersons of this committee, who met on the 10th of December. The recommendations referred to this report are simply that members, if they're minded, are recommended to agree to confer the Wirral Award upon those recipients recommended by the Wirral Award Working Party, and secondly, to make appropriate arrangements for the presentation ceremony to take place, if possible, due to, in light of the current pandemic, that may not realise itself in a face-to-face presentation ceremony, depending on circumstances, but paragraph 3 does set out the possibility as an alternative to hold a virtual ceremony with certificates being forwarded on at some point in the future. So those, as members will be aware, the costs associated with the Wirral Award would be accommodated from existing approved mayoral budget. So that effectively, Chair, is the recommendations of this particular report, and committee are recommended to follow those recommendations through.
Is there any comments from anyone suggesting anything different from what Ken has just set out?
Chair,
Or we all happy?
Chair.
Yes.
It's Mike Collins here. Just to save time or anything else, because this has all been discussed by a group of senior councillors, can I actually move the proposal so we can carry on, and then, as your comments earlier on, have a short meeting? So I'd like to actually propose that we accept those recommendations and move with those proposals.
Can I have a seconder?
Thank you. That's approved by Mike. Is there a seconder?
Yeah, second that, Steve Williams.
Okay.
Are all in agreement with that proposal and second? You should me to go through each and for transparency, I might just have to refer to each member to make sure that they're content with that. So in those circumstances, for transparency purposes, can I just refer then to the individual councillor, starting with Councillor Davies? You content with that?
Can I just interrupt before you start, because we do have an exempt item on the end of the agenda which covers this particular piece of work.
Well, the exempt aspect of it would only result in the committee going into exempt mode if there was specific discussions of those individuals referred to. If the nominations are agreed or approved by members, then clearly we don't have to go into an exempt mode.
Right, that's very helpful.
Does that assist, Councillor?
Yes, thank you.
It's going back, Ken. I am in full agreement. Thank you.
I'm obliged. Councillor Greaney?
Yes, fully agree.
Councillor Jones? Obviously you're on the nominated. Yes, you happy?
I presume you mean Councillor Chris Jones, do you?
Well, Councillor Adrian, sorry, yourself, Councillor.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm quite happy to agree.
And Councillor Chris Jones?
Yes, I'm happy to agree.
Councillor Irene Williams?
Yes, I agree.
Councillor Jerry Williams?
Agreed.
Councillor Stapleton?
Agreed.
Councillor Muspratt?
Agreed.
Councillor Collins? Well, Councillor Collins obviously proposed it. Councillor Rowlands?
Agreed, Ken.
Councillor Williams has seconded. Councillor Wright?
Agreed.
Councillor Mitchell? I think that's an agreement. I think he's on silence. Yes. And Councillor Cooke?
Agreed, yes.
Yes. Well, that's unanimous then, Chair, for those members sitting. So that's a recommendation which can be approved, and obviously arrangements will then take place as appropriate to for the Wirral Award to be celebrated.
Okay, that's excellent. The decision's been made and it was unanimous. Now, where does this leave us with section 5? This is exempt information.
It's only exempt information, Chair, if there were going to be specific discussions in relation to those individuals as part of the meeting. But as everybody is in accord with the recommendations, this aspect of the discussion doesn't need to go into an exempt mode.
Right, so that takes us to item 6, I believe, yes? That is the little ward. What do we have to do here, Ken? We simply approve recommendations.
I think you've already approved the recommendations.
We've gone on ahead of ourselves very effectively then.
Yes.
In that case, there's not an awful lot left for us to do, is there?
I think that concludes business.
Yep. Well, thank you all for making my job very easy, officers in particular, and I'm sure we'll all want to get